Bartolomeo Cristofori created approximately 9 pianos between 1709 and 1730. It wasn't a piano that by name as we know it today. It was originally the choice of Bartolomeo Cristofori to call it articembalo or clavicembalo di arpa, which basically meant grand harpsichord, and explained that it was struck by hammers rather than quills. The harpsichord that can play quietly and loudly, but never so much as intelligibly. Cristofori constructed what became the first piano about 1709. Instead of the field jacks used to pluck the string on the harpsichord, Cristofori used the invention of hammers. His system of leverage for the one hammer increased its velocity by 8 times that of the keys, and achieved an escapement which is not commonly realized. That was achieved by the notch which was on the first primary lever, by which, when the jack lifted it, as the hammer gradually reached the string, the jack dropped away from the notch, allowing the hammer to escape. The hammer was then caught by which is called a rear check, which is used in the common pianos of these days. Anyone who tells you that a piano was never invented as such is basically incorrect. The invention that Cristofori produced, however, was very much like the harpsichords which were owned by Fernando di Medici, very expensive. Prince Fernando di Medici had about 40 harpsichords and spinets, and employed Bartolomeo Cristofori to build new ones. Cristofori was able to make many changes to improve the tones of his pianos in the remainder of his life, one of which in 1720 was the addition of a soft pedal which enabled the movement of the keyboard to slide in such a way that the bi-chord stringing, which is 2 strings per note, which was used by Cristofori throughout his piano, was moved to strike only one of the 2 strings, which produces thereby the quieter sound. The cost of these instruments was, like the harpsichord, absolutely prohibitive to the normal person who would never have dreamed of even owning a harpsichord, let alone a new invention. The strategy and the wealth of princes and kings and queens was the benefactor for the harpsichord. We come to the productions of Silbermann in Germany, who produced, by copying the similar actions to those which Cristofori had invented, having died basically unrecognized and with no wealth at all from his invention, other than his employ with the Prince Ferdinando de Medici. Such the popularity of opera in the 18th century was such that this largely overshadowed the development of the piano, but the square piano in the mid-1700s enabled the affordability to be going towards the middle classes, and by the 1780s and 90s the constructions of the first grand piano as such were affordably produced for the homes, very much heralded by manufacturers such as John Broadwood and Sons, which was in fact instigated in approximately 1728. By the time we arrive at 1810 and 1820, the Herald family in France, Paris, Sebastian Herald, invented the double escapement action, which was basically a second lever which enabled the capturing and harnessing of the intense velocity of the hammer as it rebounds from the string, to be harnessed in such a way and controlled that repetition of the sound was more affordably producible by the player. And along with the invention of the graph, which was a means of connecting the strings by position on the frames. Now the early steel frames did not come in until the early 1800s, and the iron frame was not invented by production as it had to be forged in foundries until the mid-19th century. By the time of the 19th century, the piano still had not achieved a secure future in terms of reliability, and composers such as Liszt, such great performer he was reputably often breaking strings, because the instruments which his performances proposed for manufacture were substandard, and the strings were unable to cope with the tolerances which the sound required for performance and its entirety of volume were not affordably strong. This was largely overcome by the invention of the iron frame piano, separate to the steel plate, which was some 40-50 years earlier. So we arrive at the 20th century, which is 1900s, and if it wasn't for the two great wars, the productions of the theatre, where the concert hall, its invention, became the prowess of state, such Tin Pan Alley put the sound of music into the affordable homes of the common man. And so you see that many of the achievements of Cristofori were the invention of the piano. It is absolutely pitiful to suggest that the piano was never invented as such, as I see one person once wrote. Further, Cristofori did produce the absolute ultimate in reverse rest blank stringing, in which the strings were sighted and attached to its pins beneath the rest blank. This gave the piano the option, compared to nowadays, of having far less distance for the hammers to travel, and produced, although CHRISTOFORI's being the simpler option, without the double escapements, enabled a very light and fluent touch. It is only in a study of all these things that when you buy a piano from a seller, you are able to realize that there is much more to understanding and playing as a pianist as compared to somebody who simply plays a piano or has it solely as a piece of furniture. There is very much more to buying a piano than there is to paying for it, to having it given you, or even spending hundreds of thousands of pounds. The principles that I have always used in my performance are that the music takes the priority. It is never the instrument. To that degree, I always believed that the only way I could succeed was to own the best instrument. That is not necessarily the most expensive. It is the best instrument to play, irrespective of age. Irrespective of maker and irrespective of manufacturing design or type. Everything everybody else ever told me was absolute poppycock. I think the evidence that will ever stand before you is my composition, which proves that the only reason for owning a piano is to produce the sound of music. It is absolutely ironic that in the days that we have 2.5 centuries later from its design inception by Cristofori, achieved a state whereby everyone has access to a piano, but the music so much more, which is written for it, is more diabolical than even the music for the harpsichord, which was once the realm of kings and queens and princes by affordability. One wonders where another 100 years will take you when you realise that there is nowhere else that strings, that wood, that metal, that catgut, that felt has to go to achieve what in sound has been achieved in 300 years. And whether electrically any measure of the criteria of such you may measure or say as greatness can be accountable using electricity, I would never have so many years ahead of her to even so much as measure. That has to be done to you, who are looking for something perhaps for your lounge. But my pianos are much more than that. I chose them to be the finest performing instruments. I don't know about the music that you make, and I've never heard much of Chopin or Liszt. That's why I write my own. Fernando Ray signing off. Memories of Silberman, of Bartolomeo Cristofori and Ferdinando de' Medici. Nothing in a large world where everything is known about everything and everyone can sustain as much surely for any production of any piano in the home as much as it did when there was more in the 17th century. Such greater desire to make it. I bid you good luck on your search. Fernando Ray.